It was an ordinary Tuesday evening in Denver when Sarah's world began to crumble. She had been standing in the kitchen, stirring onions and garlic, the softest filling the room when Ethan came home from work. There was something different about his face, an expression she had seen before, the one that meant he had made a decision and expected her to agree without question. He didn't kiss her or even take off his coat. Instead, he stood in the doorway and said calmly, "Sarah, make sure the house is spotless. My sister just had her baby and she'll be living here for 6 months so you can take care of the child." The spoon froze in her hand, the smell of dinner suddenly turning bitter in her throat. She blinked, trying to make sense of what she'd just heard. "Wait, what?" she asked softly, but Ethan's tone left no room for discussion. He wasn't asking. He was commanding. Sarah felt her heart begin to race. For 15 years she had worked as a teacher, waking before sunrise, spending her days managing energetic children, and still returning home to cook, clean and handle the house. Now, without warning, she was being told to add a newborn baby to her already exhausting life. "Ethan, can we talk about this?" she began, her voice trembling. "The house is small and I'm exhausted after work." He cut her off sharply. "There's nothing to talk about, Sarah. Jess needs help, and you're the only one who can give it." She stared at him, feeling as though the air had been sucked out of the room. His tone was final, cold, distant. "She'll be here on Sunday," he added, walking away as if the conversation were over. Sunday. That gave Sarah just 3 days to prepare her mind and her home for a situation she had never agreed to. She thought about Jess, Ethan's younger sister. 5 years younger, always distant and cold during family gatherings. She had barely spoken to Sarah except for short, polite replies. Still, Ethan had always defended her. "She's just shy," he used to say. But as Sarah stirred the onions again, she couldn't shake the odd feeling that this situation was far more complicated than it appeared. That night, during dinner, Sarah tried again. "Ethan, I know your sister needs help, but 6 months is a long time. And what about her husband, Mark? Can't he help?" Ethan didn't meet her eyes. "Mark's overwhelmed. Jess needs space." The words didn't sit right with her. Mark had always seemed like a decent man, quiet but devoted to his wife. Why would he suddenly be unable to care for his own child? "That sounds strange," she said, watching him closely. Ethan shrugged, stabbing his food with unnecessary force. "It's complicated," he muttered. Sarah decided not to push further that night, but something deep inside her whispered that this wasn't just about family duty. It was about secrets. When Ethan fell asleep beside her later, Sarah stared at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning. The man she had loved and trusted for over a decade had made a life-changing decision without her input. The unease wouldn't leave her chest. There was something hidden beneath his calmness, something dark. The next day, she confided in her friend Emily during lunch at school. Emily frowned as Sarah told her everything. "Girl, this sounds wrong," Emily said. "A man making decisions like that without you. And that excuse about her husband. No way." Sarah forced a small smile, but her friend's words echoed in her mind for the rest of the day. Deep down, she knew Emily was right. Something was terribly wrong and Sunday was coming fast. Saturday morning arrived heavy with tension. Ethan left early, claiming he needed to help Jess pack her things. Sarah spent the morning cleaning the house in silence, her mind racing. When he returned in the afternoon, he carried 2 large suitcases and a baby crib. Seeing those items in her living room felt like a punch in the stomach. "Where are they going to sleep?" she asked quietly. "In the guest room," he replied, not even looking at her. The so-called guest room was just a storage space cluttered with old boxes and unused clothes. Together, they spent hours clearing it out, setting up a small bed and the crib. As Ethan handled the baby clothes with strange care, Sarah noticed how gentle he was. Too gentle for a man who had never shown interest in babies. "Have you seen Leo yet?" she asked, pretending to sound casual. Ethan nodded. "Yeah. I went to see him at the hospital when he was born." Sarah froze. That was news to her. "You did?" she asked, surprised. Yeah, it was just a quick visit, he said quickly, turning away. That detail felt like a red flag waving in front of her eyes. Ethan always shared the smallest details about his day. But somehow, he hadn't mentioned visiting his sister in the hospital. Something wasn't adding up. Later that night, he seemed restless, pacing the hallway, checking his phone, pretending to get water. When he finally fell asleep, Sarah heard him muttering in his sleep, his tone full of anxiety. It was the first time she had ever seen him that unsettled. Sunday came too soon. Ethan woke early, showered and dressed sharply, wearing the cologne Sarah had given him for their wedding anniversary, the one he saved for special occasions. I'm going to pick them up, he said. Don't you want me to come? Sarah asked, hoping for a glimpse of reassurance. No need, he said coldly. You can stay and get the house ready. And then he left. Alone in the silence of the spotless house, Sarah sat on the couch, thinking about what getting the house ready even meant. It already looked perfect. Still, she walked through the rooms again, her mind painting scenes of the chaos that was about to invade her peace. The crying baby, the sleepless nights, the tension. But underneath it all, one thought screamed louder than the rest. What was Ethan hiding? Her thoughts wouldn't stop replaying the past months. Jess's sudden pregnancy, Ethan's frequent absences, always with the excuse of helping his sister. The whispered calls on the back porch. The strange guilt in his eyes when she asked simple questions. Sarah began connecting dots that no longer looked innocent. Maybe Jess's cold behavior at family gatherings hadn't been jealousy. It had been fear. Fear of being discovered. She shook her head, refusing to believe it, but the idea wouldn't go away. No, she whispered to herself. He wouldn't. But even as she said it, her heart felt the truth before her mind did. The sound of Ethan's phone buzzing on the bed jolted her back to reality. He had forgotten it at home. Sarah reached for the phone with trembling hands. A message notification appeared on the screen. It was from Jess. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely breathe. She knew she shouldn't open it, but the temptation was unbearable. One tap later, her world came crashing down. Love, I'm already packing. I can't wait to be close to you again. Sarah's breath hitched. Love. She scrolled, eyes wide. Thanks for convincing Sarah. You really managed to get her to accept our story. 6 months will fly by, but at least we'll be together every day. Her knees went weak. Together every day. Her mind spun in disbelief. And then came the final line, the one that ripped her soul apart. I can't wait for you to hold Leo in your arms. He needs to get to know his father better. The phone slipped from Sarah's hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. For a moment, she just stood there frozen, her mind refusing to process what she had just read. Father. The word echoed in her skull like a scream. Leo wasn't Mark's son. Leo was Ethan's. Her husband's. She sank onto the edge of the bed, gasping for breath, her entire body trembling. The man she had shared 12 years of love, laughter, and trust with had a baby, with his own sister. Her vision blurred as tears welled in her eyes. Every memory of their marriage flashed before her like shards of glass, each one cutting deeper than the last. She picked up the phone again, desperate for answers even though she already knew the truth. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the conversation, reading each message like a stab to the heart. March. Jess. Are you sure you want to do this? What if Sarah suspects? Ethan, she'll never guess. She trusts me completely. A sob escaped her throat. They had been plotting this for years, right under her nose. April. Jess. I'm pregnant. Ethan, that's wonderful, love. Baby. Sarah dropped the phone again, clutching her stomach. She felt sick, betrayed, disgusted. All those evenings when Ethan had claimed to be working late. He had been with her. Jess. Sarah forced herself to keep reading, though every word felt like poison. May Jess. Mark suspects something. He says the dates don't add up. Ethan, don't worry, love. We'll make him believe the baby is his. Another message. June. Jess. I'll tell Mark we had a fight. That'll explain why I'm staying with you after the birth. Then perfect. I'll convince Sarah. Sarah's stomach turned. That conversation, the one about Jess needing help, it hadn't been spontaneous at all. It had been rehearsed, planned, manipulated. She was never meant to have a choice. She was the final piece of their twisted plan, to play babysitter to their forbidden child. She stumbled into the bathroom and vomited, her body violently rejecting the truth her mind could barely handle. She clung to the sink, shaking uncontrollably. How could he? How could they? Incest, betrayal, deceit, all wrapped up in one horrific reality. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Pale, hollow-eyed, broken. The phone still lay on the bed, glowing faintly with the evidence of her ruined life. She returned to it, scrolling further, finding photos. Ethan and Jess together, smiling, her belly swollen, his hand resting on it lovingly. One caption burned itself into Sarah's mind. Our family finally together. Her breath caught. Family. That was how they saw themselves. Ethan, Jess, and baby Leo. And she. She was just the fool meant to cook their meals, wash their clothes, and rock their baby to sleep while they laughed behind her back. The humiliation was unbearable. For years, she had believed in her marriage, defended Ethan, and stood by him through every challenge. Now she realized she had been defending a monster. The sound of keys in the lock jolted her out of her thoughts. They were here. Ethan had returned, with Jess and the baby. Sarah wiped her tears, placed the phone exactly where he had left it, and took a deep breath. She had seconds to compose herself before facing the two people who had destroyed her world. She heard their voices in the entryway. Sarah, we're here. Ethan called cheerfully, as if everything were normal. Her legs felt like they would give out, but she forced herself to move. She looked in the mirror one last time and practiced a neutral expression. Then she walked downstairs slowly, every step heavy with dread. In the living room, Jess stood holding the baby while Ethan helped her with her coat. The smile Jess gave Ethan was not a sister's smile. It was intimate, filled with something dark and forbidden. "Hi, Sarah," Jess said softly, not quite meeting her eyes. "Thanks for having us." Sarah swallowed hard. "Welcome, Jess," she managed. Her voice sounded almost normal. Ethan kissed Sarah lightly on the cheek, the same kiss he'd given her 1,000 times before, but this time it made her skin crawl. "Sarah, this is Leo," he said proudly. Sarah looked at the baby, and her heart twisted. The resemblance to Ethan was undeniable. The same eyes, the same chin, the same faint dimple that used to make her smile. "He's beautiful," she lied through clenched teeth. "Do you want to hold him?" Jess offered. "No, that's okay. You must be tired from the trip." "I'll show you to your room," Sarah replied, desperate to escape before her emotions cracked through her mask. Upstairs, she guided them into the small room that had once been her storage space. Jess placed the baby in the crib and began unpacking, moving around like she already owned the place. Ethan watched her with quiet admiration, his eyes soft, almost worshipful. Sarah stood in the doorway, her hands balled into fists, forcing herself to stay silent. "I'll leave you to get settled," she said finally, and left the room before her composure shattered. In the kitchen, she leaned against the counter, breathing hard. 6 months. That was how long they planned to live under her roof, pretending. 6 months of lies, deceit, and disgust disguised as family duty. But as she stood there, another emotion began to rise, rage. It burned through the shock and pain, replacing tears with focus. They thought she was naive. They thought she would obey, play the dutiful wife, and never suspect a thing. But now she knew everything, and knowing gave her power. They would let their guard down, thinking she was oblivious. They would relax, grow careless. And while they did, she would be watching, waiting, planning. The calm teacher they knew was gone. In her place was a woman with nothing left to lose, and that made her dangerous. From the kitchen window, Sarah saw a familiar truck pull into the driveway. Mark's truck. He climbed out, carrying a car seat and a few boxes. His face was pale and drawn, the look of a man weighed down by something he didn't understand. "Mark," she whispered to herself. "He deserves to know." She realized in that moment that she wasn't alone in this betrayal. Mark had been lied to, too, used and humiliated just like her. Maybe together, they could turn the tables on the people who had destroyed their lives. Sarah wiped her tears, straightened her shoulders and stepped outside. It was time to tell him the truth. Sarah approached Mark quietly from the side yard, keeping her voice low so Ethan and Jess wouldn't hear. "Mark," she called softly. He turned, surprise flickering in his tired eyes. "Hey, Sarah. Sorry to drop by like this. Just bringing Jess's stuff." His voice was hollow, defeated. "Mark, can we talk for a second?" she said, her heart pounding. "Are you sure Leo is your son?" The question hit him like a blow. He stared at her, eyes wide. "Why would you ask that?" "Because," she whispered, "I found something today. Messages between Ethan and Jess. You need to sit down." They sat on the old bench under the maple tree, its dry leaves crunching beneath their feet. Sarah told him everything. The messages, the photos, the truth about Leo's real father. With each revelation, Mark's face grew paler. "No," he muttered. "No, that can't be true." "I'm sorry, Mark," Sarah said softly. "I wish I was wrong." Mark buried his face in his hands, shaking his head. "I worked double shifts for that baby," he whispered. "I painted the nursery, built the crib. I thought he was mine." His voice cracked. "She destroyed me." Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "They destroyed both of us." Mark lifted his head slowly, eyes red with disbelief and fury. "You're sure about this?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "I saw it all on Ethan's phone. Messages calling each other love, pictures, even the baby photos." She hesitated. "Leo is Ethan's son." Mark stood up and started pacing. "I knew something was off," he said bitterly. "Jess changed after she got pregnant. Cold, distant. She made excuses not to touch me." He looked at Sarah, pain etched deep in his face. "What do we do now?" She took a deep breath. "We act smart. We don't confront them yet. We let them think they've fooled us." Mark frowned. "Why?" "Because," Sarah said, her voice hardening, "we need time to plan." She explained her idea, to let Ethan and Jess move in, pretend everything was normal, and then strike back when they least expected it. Mark listened in silence, then nodded slowly. "I'm in," he said finally. "After what they've done, I want them to pay." They agreed that Mark would visit often, pretending to be the concerned husband, while Sarah gathered her own proof and prepared her revenge. It was the first moment in days that she felt like she wasn't drowning. Together they had a purpose. The next day, Sarah went through the house, taking mental inventory of everything she owned. The furniture, the appliances, the memories attached to each. Every chair, every plate, every picture on the wall represented 12 years of her life with Ethan. But now those things felt poisoned, tainted by betrayal. That's when the idea came. She would give Ethan exactly what he wanted. A spotless house. Empty, clean, stripped of every trace of her. She would sell everything, leave nothing behind, and disappear before they even realized what had happened. For the first time in days, she smiled. Over the next few days, Sarah quietly made calls to second-hand furniture stores, arranging appraisals under the excuse of renovations. The buyers came while Ethan was at work and Jess was upstairs with the baby. By Wednesday, the sofa, the dining table, and the television were gone. By Thursday, the fridge, stove, and washing machine followed. Every time Ethan asked, she fed him a calm lie about plumbing issues and temporary repairs. He believed her easily, just as she had once believed his lies. Each sale brought her closer to freedom, and every dollar she tucked away in her bag felt like taking back a piece of her power. By Friday, Sarah had rented a small furnished apartment downtown with the help of Mark's real estate contact. That night, while Ethan worked late and Jess dozed off with Leo, Mark helped Sarah move her clothes and essentials, one quiet trip at a time. "Are you sure about this?" Mark asked as they carried the last box to his truck. Sarah nodded. Completely. Tomorrow's the end. They spent the drive in silence, both lost in thought. They thought we were weak, Sarah said finally. But they forgot something. I'm a teacher. I know how to plan lessons, schedules, and outcomes. And tomorrow, class will be in session. Saturday dawned cold and gray, the perfect backdrop for her plan. She wrote her final note at her new apartment, her words precise and sharp as a knife. Dear Ethan, you said to leave the house spotless. Mission accomplished. I sold everything. The money's in my account. Now the house is all yours. A clean start for you, Jess, and your son. Mark and I both know the truth, and we're done being your victims. Take care of Leo. He deserves honest parents, even if he was born from deceit. She signed it, your ex-wife, Sarah. Folding the note carefully, she drove back to the house, placed it on the kitchen table, and walked out without looking back. An hour later, she sat in Mark's truck parked on the corner, waiting. Her pulse thundered in her ears as Ethan's car pulled into the driveway. He got out, carrying groceries, and entered the house. A few moments later came the first shout, muffled but unmistakable. Jess! Get down here. Sarah and Mark exchanged a glance. Then Jess appeared at the window, baby in her arms, her face full of confusion. More shouting followed. Where's the furniture? What happened? We've been robbed. No, Ethan's voice roared. She found out. He had seen the note. Sarah smiled as tears of relief filled her eyes. Ethan stormed out of the house, calling Sarah's name into the empty street, while Jess stood behind him, pale and shaking. How could she know? Jess cried. You left your phone at home, genius. Ethan snapped. Their argument drew neighbors to their windows, whispers spreading like wildfire. That's when Sarah and Mark stepped out of the truck. Ethan's face drained of color. Sarah, he started, but she raised a hand. You wanted a spotless house, Ethan. Now you have one, spotless, silent and empty, just like the love you killed. Mark glared at Jess. You destroyed everything good in our lives. Now live with it. Sarah turned to leave, her voice steady. Goodbye, Ethan. Goodbye, Jess. Enjoy your clean start. As they drove away, Sarah looked one last time in the mirror and saw the two of them standing there, broken, holding the child of their sin. For the first time in 12 years, Sarah smiled. She was free.